Welcome back. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Katie, and today I am so excited to teach you guys a new craft that I have picked up in the last year, and it has just been such a joy and so neat to do, and that is crocheting a temperature blanket. Now, I know this doesn't necessarily look like a blanket because it's so narrow, but I'll kind of explain that piece in a minute. The thing that I absolutely love about this project is it is easy. I am not an experienced crocheter. If I can do it, you can do it. It's just a simple single crochet stitch, and the only kind of fancy thing you'll need to figure out is how to change colors. But it's actually pretty darn easy, so you can totally do this. But I will say I made a lot of mistakes in the beginning, so much so that I actually did an entire year's worth of a temperature blanket strip until I realized that I made several critical errors, and this is all essentially trash, and I had to start over. So I'm hopeful that this video is going to help get you started out on the right track so you can learn from my mistakes and just have a smooth sailing experience. So what is a temperature blanket exactly? So what it is you're going to be crocheting one row every single day of a year, and then you pick the color based on what the high temperature of that day is. Now, you don't even have to do high temperature. You could choose to do the low temperature, you could do precipitation, you could do wind speed. Really, it's anything that you find interesting and something that you want to track throughout the year to kind of see patterns in your specific area. Personally, I've chosen to do the high temperature, and I feel like that's what most people end up doing. And then you get this really cool rainbow effect where you get the cool colors starting with winter, moving into spring, and then the warm colors of summer, and then getting back into fall, and then winter again. Okay, next let's talk about why this is such a skinny little strip and not a full blanket. It looks nothing like a blanket at the moment. So every temperature blanket I think that I've ever seen has been a full blanket width. So one blanket is 1 year, but I am somebody that gets busy, especially in the summertime when it's gardening season and it's food preservation. I might go a month or two before having time to sit down and work on a craft. And so I didn't want to get completely buried under a big time commitment like that. So I decided to do a 5-year temperature blanket. So I'm doing a strip for every year, and this is going to be extra special because I'm doing the first 5 years of us here at our property. So this is 2024. I just finished this. I'm going back and doing 2023. And then today we're going to be starting 2025 together now that it's mid-January. And I'm super excited about this because I think that it's going to be a really neat way to just compare year to year and kind of see some patterns or some really unique years and see them stand out. So that's how I've chosen to do my temperature blanket. You can follow suit, or you can just do a whole blanket is 1 year. The same principles for how to make the blanket is exactly the same. Thankfully, the supplies for this is super simple. It's just yarn and a crochet hook, but the yarn you choose is going to be absolutely essential to getting that blanket feel that you want. You want some good weight to it so it'll kind of hold structure and keep you warm. But the thing that I want to encourage you to try is a natural fiber. Acrylic yarn is so popular right now, and I get it. It's inexpensive, it's widely available, there's tons of colors, but I'm trying to get away from synthetic stuff as much as possible and stay with natural fibers. So I have invested in a wool yarn. This is the Lions Brand Yarns local grown 100% USA wool, and it is worth every penny. I would say that this one is fairly affordable when it comes to wool yarns, and I've just been really impressed with it. Not only that, but I love the colors that it comes in. I was really looking for more muted colors. I feel like a lot of the temperature blankets that I see are very bold, kind of rainbow colors, and that's fine if that's what you like, but I really wanted just a color palette that suits my taste and how I decorate around here, and so that this is something that I'm gonna wanna have out and have as a keepsake. And yeah, I'm just really excited about this line. I'll make sure to link this in the description, so if you want to follow along and use the same yarn, you can. So here is my little organization sheet that shows me what color to do for what temperature range. I ended up picking 11 different colors because our temperatures vary quite widely here in Minnesota. We can have highs all the way down below in sub-zero, which is today, our high is -9. Woohoo, great day to be crocheting. And we can get up to 90 plus. I debated doing 100, but I think we probably hit 100 maybe one time every 10 years. So that one wasn't worth it for me to add on a color there. But if you're someone where you're in a more like temperate area and your temperature ranges are a lot narrower, you know, you could cut some of these colors out, or I've seen people go by 5-degree increments. So it's totally up to you. These are the colors specific to that brand of yarn that I showed you. Forgot to mention I have a 12th color. So this one is called Vanilla Bean. It's just a nice neutral warm white. So I decided to do that to separate my months. So it's kind of easy to keep track, but you don't have to do that. If you just want it one continuous kind of band of color, you can definitely do it that way, but I kind of like how it breaks it up. The next important thing to pay attention to is crochet hook size. That was my first big mistake with my oopsies blanket that didn't turn out very well. And this one was a little sneaky. So if you end up getting this yarn, it says to do a 6mm hook size, and that's what I did. And I'll show you what happened. Okay, maybe it's the way I crochet. Again, I'm a total beginner and I feel like I don't know what I'm doing half the time, but look at what happened. You can see it's a very loose weave. There's a lot of holes in there and it just kind of like moves and shifts. And I knew once I was gonna add more and more years to this was gonna get heavy, and it was just like too loosey-goosey, and it wasn't giving me that nice, more firm, I guess, texture that I was hoping for, a kind of put together, tight knit. And then another thing happened with my failed temperature blanket strip. I'll hold it up and show you. With it being a looser stretch, look at how long this got. It's like twice my body length. So it was useless. Like that is a massive, massive blanket. So now I use a 5.5 for this yarn, and I think that's perfect. I'll show you the size of this one. I don't know, I feel like that is a much better blanket length. So definitely go with a 5.5, at least if you crochet like I do, and don't follow the package instructions to do a 6. Now, before we get started on 2025 together, I need to know what temperatures happened so far in these past few weeks so that we even know what colors to use. And most weather websites out there offer historical weather data, so you can just kind of put in your city or your zip code. I like to use Virtual Crossing. That works well for me, and they seem to have more information on smaller towns, which is great. But again, most of them should be fine. And I made this nice little organization table. So I have a page for every month of the year, and then I have 5 columns for each year where I can record all of my temperatures. And I've been trying to think of a great way where I can share this with you all, because it took a little while for me to make it, and I find that it's really helpful to stay organized. So I'll think on this and I'll put it in the description if I find a good way to distribute this. And so here we go for 2025. I was able to get our first chunk of temperatures in. You can see we have -9 today, so definitely got into that cold snap. This will be my first time using this color because 2024 and 2023 weren't all that cold. So this will be fun to dig into. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So our first temperature for the day is 23. So we're gonna be doing this Liberty color, which is this beautiful blue. And what we're gonna do to begin is start our casting stitches. So for my temperature blanket, being the strips for each year, I do 60 stitches. So if you're wanting to do a full temperature blanket, I would times that by 5 probably. So what would that be? 300 stitches. So we're gonna start with, I think it's called a slip knot. So I just take the end here and have it cross, and then I reach through and pull. So we'll just slip the hook in there and give it a pull. And now we're just going to chain on 60 stitches to get started. So this part's pretty easy. I just like to put the string over the top, and then I hold the knot and just slip it on through. So that's one. And the key is you want it kind of loose, not super tight, or it's gonna be a headache for you later, but kind of in that middle ground. So that is 3, we're gonna go 4, 5, 6, and I'm just gonna keep going until I have 60 done. Okay, that should be 60 and it'll kind of look like a little braid. So what I like to do now, just go back through and I like to count all the little nubs. Okay, so we have our 60 starting stitches, but this doesn't count yet as January 1st. So now we need to do our actual stitches back. But before we do that, I forgot we need to do one extra chain because we need a stitch to go up before we start to go over. So I'm actually gonna chain 61 here. So one more, flip it over so you can see that you have the braid on one side and we want those little nubs on top. So we're gonna go through this first nub here. You're gonna put your crochet hook through, and I like to kind of pull this a little tight because this might have loosened up on you, but not super tight. You still want it to move. So now we have both loops there. I like to hold it around my finger twice for tension. Some people just do it once. It's just up to you and what's most comfortable. And we're gonna hook around and then go under that one. And then we're gonna hook again and then go through both loops. And there we go, we have our first stitch. And we're gonna do the same thing all the way down. So again, looking for that next nub over, going through, hooking through that first loop, hooking again, and through 2. If this is challenging for you, don't worry. It is hard for me too. Getting started is the worst. It's like this loosey-goosey small little thing and you're trying to get the tension just right and it's just hard to hang on to. Once it gets more established, it gets a lot easier. So hang in there. And I'm sorry I don't have like those beautiful model hands for you guys when I watch those crochet videos. I have such beautiful hands, but nope, you've got homestead hands over here. And it's -9 out, so we have dry, incredibly dry skin. And I'm sure you've noticed my one fake fingernail. I smashed it, gosh, maybe a couple of months ago now, and it was starting to look okay, and then my thumbnail started to fall off. So I basically stuck it back together by putting a fake nail on there. That was Ryan's idea. So feeling bougie with my one fake nail. Got dog hair in here. You guys, this is a homestead version of crochet videos. So there we go. We have our first set of stitches. There are 60 there. I went back and counted everything. So let's turn around. But before we do that, we need to check our temperatures. So we may need to change colors. I like to do a check mark when I've finished it. So the next one is 21. So we're gonna keep that same color and then we'll change our next row together. So next we're gonna do our extra stitch on the edge, just like we did our 61st stitch. So just go around the hook and loop it through. So it'll be a singular loop there. And then we're gonna turn it around. So now we're gonna be working on the back side. And this is gonna look a little bit different since we're not looking for the nubs anymore. On the top now we have a braid. So we are going to go in underneath both pieces of yarn of that braid. But then the stitch is the same. So we're gonna hook 1 and then hook 2, and now it's building even a little bit taller. So that next braid is there. I'm gonna go underneath both. We're gonna hook 1, hook 2, and move on again. Now you can see that I'm already starting to move more fluidly. Just once you get that first row finished, it just goes so much better. So we're gonna keep cranking along this one until we get to the end, and I'll show you how to change colors. And I think the biggest thing to master, like the stitch itself is pretty easy, but getting your tension right is the most important. You might want to do a couple practice rows and then you can just pull it out and do it over again until you really feel like you're getting consistent with your tension and it looks the way you want it to look. You may want a tighter look, you may want a looser look. So So we are done with 21 degrees on January 2nd. Next up is 13, and so that is gonna be our blue jeans color. So I have a little bit of this left from last year's temperature blanket. What you're gonna do is take your new color and kind of fold it over. I would say I have maybe 4 inches there. And let's go ahead and finish this last stitch. So I'm gonna go in there, hook, so that I have 2 loops. So we're not gonna totally finish it. And now instead of hooking this yarn again, we're gonna hook our new yarn. So I kind of like hold this loop here and this one here, because you still want tension on these loops, and then hold this here. So it's kind of like a 3-handed thing. And then I hook this through. So we have the new color on the hook. And then we need our singular crochet before we turn the corner. So we're gonna grab our new color and loop around. Again, kind of holding all these strings in place. Sometimes I'll kind of go back and tighten them a little bit and loop around. So there we go. And now we need to trim our old color away. So I like to trim it about the same length as our new end. So I'll just do that. And now we have our 2 old ends and our new end. So we're gonna flip it around so that we're going the opposite direction again. So now we're just going to continue as usual, doing our hook, single crochet, going through again, single crochet, and now you can see up close what we've done. So sometimes I'll kind of like give these a little tug just to keep everything in place and snug in case anything got loose. Some people will tie these together. I never do. I don't want a big knot hanging off the end. I'll show you in a little bit how I weave these back in. So let's go ahead and finish going across with our new light blue color. All right, we are cruising along here, my friends. We made it through January 3rd. So let's cross that off. And it looks like we have 2 more in the teens. So I'm gonna breeze through this color on 2 more rows. We'll change color 1 more time together so that you really get a good feel for the whole process. I'll show you how to weave in the ends and we're done essentially. You'll be ready to roll. Okay, so we are on our way. It gets a little twirly in the beginning. Don't worry, it will straighten itself back out as you keep going. And we're gonna go back to the 20s, so our original color. So again, going in that last stitch there, hooking once. Let's make an equal length end there, or a half loop. Again, kind of holding everything together. And then hooking in that new color, hooking it 1 more time for our transition stitch, flipping it around and going into that first space for our single crochet. And off we go. So it starts to get pretty fun once you get, a bunch of colors going and really start to see it come to life. The last thing that we need to talk about though before you're completely ready to go are these loose ends and how to weave these in properly. So this is 2023 that I'm redoing. Since 2023, my first one was a complete failure. So I've made it to, I think, May. So I'm still not done with that, but I'm so excited. Once this is finished, then I can attach it to 2024 and it'll start to look like a blanket. But it's time for me to catch up on some of these loose ends. So this end obviously needs to follow this kind of teal color here. And I like to weave it in on this side of the project where it has the V's versus the other side. It's smaller, right? You don't have the distinct V there. So I like to weave it in on the distinct V side. So what we're gonna do is thread our needle. I like to go kind of right underneath these V's, if you can kind of see that. My camera's having trouble focusing, but I like to go up a few of them. So just kind of working your way up and kind of feeling it to make sure that you're staying in the center and not going on a different row. You want to stay in that teal row. So we're kind of continuing to work up. And I like to go up about the length of my needle, which is probably 3 inches. That feels pretty good for me. Now the key part is you don't want to pull too hard because you don't want to shrink it back up. So I'm just going to gently pull until it's pretty good there. You can kind of pull it back to make sure. And then to make sure that it's secure is you want to go back. That is the thing I did wrong with my first one. I just kind of kept going, and then it can kind of get loosey-goosey, or the ends just kind of stick up in the middle, where if you go backwards, then it really gets stuck. So what I like to do is go back down the middle. So we're going to be looping around this first V. So I'm going to go in the middle and then just work my way back down the center here. Oops, see, I popped out the middle. So no harm done. That's the nice thing about the darning needle. And I like to kind of pop out somewhere like there, not the very end, because I don't want the string to be kind of hanging out the edge. So somewhere about there. And again, being careful not to pull too tight here either. So I like to kind of pull this string so that I have a very small tail. And again, watching that loop and just stopping right when it starts to pull, because you don't want to kind of mess up that stitch and start pulling it. Look at that, you can't even tell that it's there. So we're just going to take our little scissors and snip, and that's it. So it's not hard, just take some time. I just like to kick on a little audiobook and knock these out. So here is everything that I've completed so far, so you can kind of get a look at what it's going to look like when it's finished. Of course, I still have 2 more years to go. So this is 2024. That is the one that I have finished all the way to the end. Now I'm going back to do 2023. So that's our first year here on the property. And then we did this one together for 2025. So I went ahead and got caught up. So here are our negative temps that I finally got to use. So I just kind of pinned these strips together just so we can get a good look at what it's eventually going to look like. There's a bunch of YouTube videos out there on different ways to attach them. So there's a bunch of different ways. I'll need to experiment and decide what feels the best for me, or how it looks. And so far it's been really fun to compare, especially if you're here in Minnesota. You may remember 2023 was our incredibly snowy year. We had so much snow. So we had these perfect, a lot of 20s and 30s. We had a little cold snap here in the single digits, but that was it. But it also never really warmed up until we had this 1 week in April where it was like, woohoo! And then we went back to cold. I remember just like being so depressed by about here. It didn't seem like we'd ever get to gardening. Where 2024 was the complete opposite. It was so warm. But I will say we started January with a bang. We had a really nice little cold snap there, but it didn't get super cold. I think the coldest we got was -15, so it wasn't too bad. And then it got so warm. I mean, these teal colors are 50 degrees. So 50 degrees in early February, that is just nuts. And there's a lot of 40s in here. So these green colors. So we were tapping maple trees. It was just such a crazy early spring, really. And it stayed warm for the most part. I mean, this is 60 degrees in March. But then the nice thing is that it didn't really get all that hot. We got, you know, plenty of our 80-degree days. We only had 1 day in the 90s. I was so nervous that we were going to get a blazing hot summer because the year started off so warm, but we did okay. Winter definitely set in hard and fast, and we've been locked into winter ever since. And speaking of, you can see, so our little strip of January so far for 2025, there are a lot of these just 20-degree days. We have teens, we have the single digits and the negatives, where a lot of these have a lot of 30s. So that's kind of this grayish color. And there's definitely a bunch in here too, where so far in January this year, I think we only have 2 weeks right there. Another set of sheets that I just recently added on is kind of a yearly tally of how many days we had in a certain temperature zone. So in 2023, you can see that we had 74 days in the 30s. So that was my most used colors. Definitely goes to show that Minnesota is a winter state. Our second most popular temperature range was the 70s, followed by the 80s. So definitely falls into line with we have a lot of winter, but our summers are quite nice. 2024 was quite different since that was a warm year. Our most used color was 85 days in the 70s, followed by 55 days in the 40s. And the third place was 51 days in the 60s. So I'm curious for 2025 where we're gonna land. So that's it, my friends. I'm so curious if any of you are going to be joining me on the temperature blanket adventure this year. Let me know in the comments. Also, let me know if you have any other fun ideas and ways to spin this project. I think we're off to a good start to January. I can't even wait to see just how the year unfolds. We'll see what's ahead for us, but yeah, I'm just so pumped about this project. Thanks so much for being here. Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you on the next video.